Hello, and welcome back to the Games Institute podcast. I'm your host, Marisa Benjamin.
And I'm Tobin Rossico.
Today we are joined by Pelisha. Can you give us a wave? Yeah, and I'm so excited for this episode because you are going to bring, I think, several perspectives that we haven't had on the podcast yet. You're going to talk about your work with Haptics, which is a new one for us, and as well your experience as an undergraduate researcher who then became a master's researcher, and also like what this whole situation has been like for you doing haptics research in virtual environments. So we're very excited to have you. Can you feel free to say hi?
Hi, thank you. That was a great intro. Yeah, I am Waterloo Strong. I've been here as an undergraduate student and now as a master's student, so it's been fun. They can't really get rid of me.
So if you go on to get your PhD, that's what we call a triple crown. You Waterloo.
Yeah, that'd be insane.
You're not the first guest who would have done that.
Yeah,
really?
And a lot. Your projects, you might need to, since like you're chewing off quite a bit of work. I don't know if that's the right phrasing. What you're working on right now is pretty massive, so you might decide that you want to stay for another 5 years.
Yeah, that's what I've been talking about with Oliver. It's a pretty big project, but we'll see how it goes. Hopefully I can get a decent amount done this year, but we will see.
I think that's the goal on everybody's mind. That was what I was losing sleep over last night was, am I really going to hit my goals this year? Or is it just going to be another write-off? So we'll talk about that.
My philosophy is if you do anything this year, you've succeeded.
I agree with that so much. I've definitely had to lower my expectations during this pandemic, but that's okay. It means I think I've been prioritizing mental health a little bit more. So it's okay. It's not a bad compromise.
I agree. Okay, Tobin, can you fire off our icebreaker question?
So the question we like to ask everybody to get a start is, what's your earliest childhood memory of playing games? These can be video games, board games, card games, make-believe, anything like that kind of was the spark for where you're at now.
Ooh, okay. So, I mean, I definitely should say this. I wouldn't call myself a gamer, but from what I can remember, I was a big fan of The Sims. Like I had the first Sims and the second, like the CDs, and I would just be on it for like 3 hours straight, and my mom would come and like bug me to get off of it. But I'm like very into like those kind of casual like lifestyle games. So yeah, it would be The Sims, I think.
Did you use cheat codes or were you a Puritan?
Oh, 100% use cheat codes. I was trying to build a mansion.
Yeah, we're not.
And I couldn't do that. Yeah, I couldn't do that with the compensation they were giving my Sims.
Yeah.
So I had to use a cheat code.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you say that you're not a gamer, because I think that Sims does qualify you the 3 hours a night. Why not? It's very true that a lot of people hesitate to take on that label, and we've talked about that in the past. But I mean, that's kind of what you make of it.
Yeah, people who play simulation games are very dedicated to that genre.
Yes.
It's a genre that I can't play because to me it feels like a chore. So if you find engagement and enjoyment from that, then that's like a completely separate preference that I don't have. So yeah, that's good.
The Sims is a simulation game, but I really don't feel like I even put it in that category for some reason, even though it obviously is, but it's just its own thing.
It really is. It just has its own category, I feel like no one even knows. I think there's like also debate if it's even just a video game in general.
Yeah. Which makes me want to ask you then, are you playing any games these days?
So I've been doing a lot of Among Us and just like the Jackbox games, just to keep in touch with a lot of my friends, because it's been pretty impossible to do in person. So just all the virtual games.
What are some of your favorite Jackbox games?
Ooh,
because those vary all over the place as well.
Yeah, is it Fibbage? There's one where you have like prompts, like you can just kind of.
That's Quiplash.
Quiplash, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, that one I love. I think it's so funny.
Fibbage is also.
Do you guys like Jackbox?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Big fans.
I tried a new one the other day. I think it's in Jackbox 5, that pack, and you're like these monsters and it's a dating show.
Yeah.
No, that's a thing.
That one was really hard
That
because
one's really
it was,
awkward to play with your family.
yes.
Yeah.
What's
And
the
then-
objective? Like, so it's
Everybody-
So you're
has a
trying to,
secret-
you text back and forth, and then after a certain amount of text, you're locked out, and then you have to ask somebody out. So then if they reciprocate, you get a point. But then there's a whole bunch of alternate things where is it a ghost or a robot or something? And if nobody asks him out, then he takes away points or something like that. Like it sets up a lose
That's
condition
so
where
funny.
everybody loses.
Yeah, everybody has a secret identity as well. So if you
Oh,
are a
okay.
werewolf, for example, you want to date somebody else, somebody new every night, so you can turn everybody into werewolves.
Mhm.
Jackbox is great.
That's so funny. That's what the pandemic has come to, virtual dating.
Absolutely. So I mean, I guess that like for you, there wouldn't really be a lot of relevance in us asking about how you transition from doing games to doing games research, because your research is actually more like haptics. So could you, instead of going that route, maybe talk about what led you to haptics research, and maybe we'll find a way to connect that to games, but we'll see.
For sure. So I honestly had no idea what haptics was prior to my master's. It was Oliver who basically kind of explained it all to me and pitched this idea. My master's application was, if anything, it was more on stats. Like I was thinking that was the path I was going to take. And I had one line, I think, about like user interface and user experience design. And I guess Oliver read that line, and that's how he kind of pitched me the idea of the Haptiverse. So I guess we'll probably get into it a little later, but just to give a little explanation of what it is, it's basically just an assortment of haptic experiences in this online collection. So that's kind of what I'm trying to make right now. And I wanted to kind of go about just like designing the user interface, like more front end. That was originally, I guess, the idea, but now I'm starting to get into back end. But yeah, just creating this collection. So exactly what you said, it's not too much with like games research, but I guess there's quite a few parallels with things that are going into the collection. Like there's a lot of haptic devices used for gaming. So I guess that would be the connection there.
Yeah, it's almost as if games research currently is benefiting a lot from haptics, and then haptics is benefiting from games research insofar as games provide a test pool.
For sure.
You can feel the haptic responses when you're playing Among Us sometimes. I think you can.
I'm not sure if I have that feature turned off, but probably. Like there's definitely quite a few games, like especially even if you have like an Apple Watch, just any like vibrotactiles from like your Apple Watch or your iPhone, like that's still haptics.
Yeah, so we're all experiencing haptics every day. Do you have a definition that you and Oliver use for when you're talking about haptics? And for the listeners, when we say Oliver, we're talking about Pelisha's supervisor, right?
Yes.
Dr. Oliver Schneider.
Yes, Oliver Schneider. So haptic technology, it's basically touch feedback. So just creating the experience of touch through technology. There's kind of two ways to go about it. There's cutaneous sensation. So that's with the skin. So if you have like a vibration or just like anything that you kind of feel when you touch something, that would be cutaneous sensations. And then there's I believe it's the kinesthetic sensations. I hope I said that right. But that's just like any movement, force feedback. So dealing with like the muscles.
And I think we're also going to be using the term vibrotactile, which is just vibration.
Yes, vibrations. When you have a call and you put your phone, when you put vibrations on, that's vibrotactile.
Oh, there's so much cool stuff. So I'm a haptics nerd, even though literally every game I play that has rumble features and stuff, I turn it off because I find it really distracting. But I think that haptics is kind of, so like what Nintendo was trying to do with the Wii with like movement and more kinetic motion playing games, I think that haptics is the future for controllers and stuff like that. So I'm really interested in what this is. So Let's dive into Haptiverse. So you gave us a little preview of it. Can you maybe be a little bit more verbose and unpack it a little bit more? And then we'll carry on with some follow-ups after that.
For sure. So Haptics it's increased quite a bit. Like it's on its way to being, I would say, ubiquitous, but not there yet. There's still a lot to unlock with haptics, but what we're basically trying to do is help hapticians kind of optimize their current design process. And we believe that an online collection with a lot of haptic experiences can potentially help them optimize their process just by helping inspire them in some way to create these new experiences, but also to kind of stop this constant process of like reinventing the wheel. A lot of hapticians don't really know exactly where to look. Like there isn't a central platform for existing experiences. So a lot of the times people just create these experiences from scratch, don't really reference haptic experiences, and it just takes a long amount of time to make. So the Haptiverse, it's a collection of heterogeneous haptic experiences and platforms. And it kind of, there's some similarities with the user interface of like YouTube a little bit. And like, if you know Thingiverse, so the 3D collection, that's kind of how you can imagine it looking, but for haptic experiences. And what's unique about it is it's for a broad range of interaction behaviors. A lot of existing haptic collections, they're usually pretty small and they're interaction behavior specific. So when we were talking about vibrotactiles, there's a collection that exists called VibeViz that has, I think, over 100 vibrations. And then there's also the pen texture toolkit. So that has probably just over 100 as well, different textures available, but there isn't a central place to just upload any type of haptic experience. And that's what we're trying to create with the Haptiverse. So a lot to do and a lot of haptic experiences to add to the collection so that hapticians can actually use it and find whatever they're looking for, but keeping me busy.
So is your role to kind of replicate those haptic experiences and then upload them, or is it to find what other people have done and kind of bring it to one place? And why is it important to have them stored in like a one-stop place where everybody has kind of a lexicon of them?
For sure. So my job is basically to find existing haptic experiences and then upload them onto the Haptiverse. And I would say, especially, I would still call myself a novice haptician, but for novices, it is really hard to know where to look to find existing haptic experiences. So I think it's super important just to have one central place to potentially find a haptic experience that you can replicate yourself, or just to get some inspiration to create new experiences. And it's important for expert hapticians because it kind of lets them use existing solutions and build off of it so they can make their own remixed version of a haptic experience. And it's neat because you can create like multimodal experiences. So you can have two interaction behaviors into one haptic experience essentially. And that's what existing haptic libraries don't have right now. They're very separate because of they're separate due to their like interaction behaviors. So there isn't one collection where you could see vibrotactiles and textures together and then get like an idea of how to combine them.
Okay. What have been some of your favorite haptic experiences that you've discovered so far through your research?
So my first time using a haptic device, other than I guess my iPhone or like Apple Watch, would be this something called a Haply device. Are you guys kind of familiar with it, or?
I don't know anything about it.
Perf. So it's this 2 degrees of freedom, like kind of pantograph. So kind of like that, and you just kind of play around with it. It's force feedback, and I had to create a game with the Haply device. So it was basically just a really simple like maze, and I would just use the pantograph to kind of go around the maze, and I would feel like resistance if I hit a wall. But that was a neat one just because I got to like build it. So you get it disassembled.
Okay, cool.
So that was just fun. I felt So like, I don't know, I felt like an expert haptician, like building it with like the little screws. Definitely am not, but I thought that was so fun. And yeah, creating my own game, because then it allowed me to better understand the obstacles that a lot of hapticians have when creating new experiences. Like it took me forever to find an existing Haply device game online, or one that I really liked. Like they were just in different repositories. They're hard to find. It's hard to know what to look for too, especially when you're new to the field. So yeah, it kind of gave me some ideas for the Haptiverse. But the Haply device is a cool one. And then there was another research student, 10A, who used the Ultra Haptics, I believe. It's like a midair device. But I thought that was super cool. Like I haven't worked with it, but just the idea that it's midair haptics sounds, I don't know. I thought that was neat.
And so is the Haptiverse, is the objective to, I mean, maybe it's not just a singular objective. Is it for like the games industry to say, hey, here's ways that you can create new experiences? Or is it for researchers to say, keep searching for new ways to use or invent haptics so that we just understand more of kind of what's capable? Is there an end kind of objective or a list of like a mission statement, I guess, for what the Haptiverse is?
That's a great question. So I would say it's for both industry and academia. Okay. And it's just something to help progress the field further. What we're kind of focusing on is 4 activities that we want to support. So we want to support hapticians use, find, share, and remix haptic experiences. So I guess that would be our mission statement in a way. But
yeah, I can see that on a nice poster.
Yeah, so that's kind of what we're focusing on, and just trying to explore features that would help support those specific activities.
Cool.
I see this as a way to advance the technology overall, because as you said, if every time somebody has to recreate the wheel just so that they can get a very basic haptic experience, then that's time that's eating away from
Sure.
pushing the needle further for this. So when I was looking at the Haptiverse, I was just stunned by how much you've already been able to do. How long have you been? It's really, really interesting, because I was in some of the, I was eavesdropping in some of the early meetings when this was a concept. This was something, like you said, that it was loosely inspired by other platforms like Thingiverse.
Yes.
And it came out of the recognition that you need to have a way to support, hapticians. And so it's so cool to me that now I can actually go onto this link, and I'm not into doing my own haptics by any means, but I can go in and learn about this thing too. So there's a third audience or 4th audience even for you.
Oh, I'm so happy you said that.
How long have you been focused on this? Is this something, also I was curious if this was something you started in undergrad or if this is new to your master's?
Yeah, so this is new to my master's. So this is my master's thesis essentially. So it's been over a year. I'm supposed to graduate around August, probably December now, but yeah, so probably just over a year. It's been a new project, but it's been a good learning experience.
It's so cool.
Thank you.
I have a question. I have 2 questions, but I actually think that they are potentially connected.
Okay.
So, okay. First question is, why would you choose to represent the haptic experiences in the library through sound?
So that's a great question. This was already kind of a research project done by Hosty Safety. So she was the person that created VibeViz, and that's the vibrotactile library. And she found it super beneficial to represent specifically vibrations through sound, or like audio, because that's technically what they are, I guess. And it's just, I would say it's makes sense because it's probably the most accessible. I don't think a lot of people have the option to get maybe a Haply device, or if they don't have iOS, like Android, like I think it would just be a lot more difficult to actually feel the vibration. I'm sure that's a thing. I'm sure there's a library for that. But yeah, there's already like studies for representing vibrotactiles, just kind of having it through sound and also like the waveform images that you saw. But for the Haptiverse right now,
the waveform images. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I had just had a huge like, oh duh, because I'm thinking to myself, how would you present that through image?
Yeah, so she's done all the hard work in figuring that out. So I got it from the ViBiz library, but it's you can only get a little snippet, like you can only hear the vibrations for the haptic experiences from ViBiz. Like you can't really do that with a Haptic device because that's like force feedback.
That's very, very cool. The follow-up that I had for you, which, potentially could be a completely different direction, but I have a hunch. I was really curious about how you were able to continue doing your research during COVID, since obviously with haptics, there's a huge component of touch.
Yeah.
So is this connected to the choice to represent it through sound and sight and images?
So I've been pretty lucky. Basically all I need to really continue with my research is a way of contacting my supervisor and other students and just like my laptop. Like I don't actually need to be working on a haptic device, so that's kind of neat. And luckily, when I did use a haptic device, so with like the Haptic device, this was pre-pandemic. So I was on the lucky end of haptic students where I actually got to use a haptic device. But yeah, for right now, technically, I should be fine. If anything's been impacted, it's just motivation, but I feel like everyone's experiencing that.
Absolutely.
Let's see. So you mentioned that it was kind of one line in your graduate application that Oliver picked up on. Were you involved with like the Human Computer Interaction Lab or the Games Institute as an undergrad student? Like, was there an interest in that kind of stuff there, or really was it really Oliver saying, "Hey, come into this world and let me like show you the ropes"? How was that transition?
Yeah, so I didn't know the Games Institute really existed in undergrad. I guess my one contact that I knew from it would have been Mark Hancock, because he was my professor 3 times. I don't know if he remembers that. But I just like think of how embarrassed I am from like when he was teaching me just how to program. But yeah, he was my professor 3 times and he taught me HCI, so human computer interaction, and that's how I kind of found this interest for it. And I had a really great time taking that course. I thought it was super creative. He did a great job with the course. Yeah, so that's what inspired the one line in my application. And then when Oliver reached out and kind of talked about the Haptiverse, that's what really sold me on it.
This is what I love about management engineering. Just the amount of opportunity that you have in that degree, the fact that you can be partway through your undergrad and then discover this whole new thing because you have this connection and there's space in your degree. Remind me though, did you join the Haptic Lab with Oliver as a co-op term, or was it as an undergraduate research assistant, like during schooling?
It was just like when I started my master's, really. That's when I got involved with the Games Institute. Like I came to visit a few times as an undergrad.
That's probably what I'm remembering. 'Cause I remember.
Yeah, I came for like the tour.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Very cool. And then, so you're now in management sciences. So then take my comment about management engineering and translate it over to management sciences. That's great.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I definitely loved my undergraduate experience. I agree. I think management engineering, it's really applicable to a lot of different fields, so it's nice.
Yeah, it seems like it really does encourage people to open up their horizons, because I still do not have a firm grasp about what everybody can do with that degree, but it seems like you can do so much.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Like I would say a lot of the students who basically have to describe what management engineering, especially in interviews, that's like our number one question. Because I mean, honestly, we didn't know what it was when we started the program, but it's just like optimizing processes. So you can apply that to whatever you want.
All right, I'm gonna throw something out there and we'll see if anything sticks.
Okay.
So, and I'm hesitant because if you don't consider yourself a gamer, you might not be aware of what's going on. But as a haptician, you probably know what's going on. So we'll see what happens. So with the recent release of the PlayStation 5, everybody's all a Twitter because the new controller that they released has very innovative haptic feedbacks with the shoulder buttons.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Where in previous controllers, you would, the shoulder buttons would all have the same kind of sensitivity. No matter what action you were doing, it took the same amount of force to click them down. But now I'm blanking on what it's called, but whatever the PS5 controller is called, the bottom shoulder button it has a little motor in it, which will cause more resistance. That's the word, resistance, when you pull it back for certain actions. So that's kind of like the newest innovation in the video game industry. So in your opinion, and with that in mind, how well do you think that current technologies are dealing with haptics? Do you think that they're all kind of, like you said, kind of reinventing the wheel and they think they're being really unique, but it's just stuff that's already existed? Or do you see any company or brand that is kind of blazing a trail saying, hey, this is something that's really effective or is causing these unique experiences?
For sure. I guess so. I don't know too much about that, but I think that's really neat that they're being super innovative with haptics. I would like, I guess, my feedback to change depending on how much I like press a button or so on. But I guess more in my experience, I had a project and I was designing this Apple Watch app with haptics and with two of my friends, Ryan and Alamide. Shout out. But it was basically just it provided a vibration to the user depending on what their heart rate was. So we had them like enter this goal heart rate, and if they were below it, or like maintaining it, there would be a different vibration. But something that we actually found there was an issue with, I'm not sure if Apple changed this already, but for an Apple Watch, you can't customize vibrations yet. I feel like that's something that they can improve on. Like, I think you only had maybe like, I'm going to say 8. There might be more. I'm sorry, Apple. But there was only 8 like preset vibrations and you couldn't customize it yet. You can on your iPhone, but it's not yet a feature. I mean, from when we were working on it like a year ago, it wasn't an option there. So I feel like that's something that can be improved on. I would say there's been a lot of strides in the haptic field, I would say. Just even like, I think the fact that we can go from like vibrations to midair haptics is pretty wild. And I would say that I think I was reading somewhere that it really picked up in like 2012. So that's not like a ton of time, but we really have made a lot of changes. And it's nice to see that like industries taking an interest in it as well.
Could you give a brief description of what you mean by midair haptics in relation to like vibration settings?
So it's basically it's this little flat platform, I want to say, that kind of produces like air pulses. So you kind of feel like this force and you can kind of get the illusion of like an object, but it's really just air. So that would be midair haptics.
That blows my mind.
Yeah, it's so wild. I don't know. I think that's super cool. And especially with like the pandemic, I feel like you can do a lot with that because touching objects is not ideal right now. So I think that's
again, maybe
cool.
Having gusts of air being blown at you might not be ideal either.
Yeah.
So the final question with that, or this train of thought, is so is your preference then kind of like these wearable technology haptics? And with that, if that is your preference, where do you see or where do you want things to go with either vibrations or midair haptics or any other kind of things that are kind of just seedlings right now?
For sure. So I am definitely interested more with, I guess, like vibrotactile. And I think there's just been a lot of advancement there. I think a lot of people have picked up an interest with vibrotactiles. I do like the idea. I do like wearables just because like I'm a big fitness person and I love my Apple Watch. So I think there's a lot that can be done with haptics there. With, for example, that Apple Watch app that I was kind of mentioning before, what we were trying to tap into was motivation and haptics. So we were trying to combine self-determination theory and haptics and see if there were any intersection there. So, I mean, I think that's something that can be explored a little. It is hard to do just because it can be with like, especially if there's like only six different options for different vibrations. What can you really do to increase someone's motivation? But one idea we did have was having different users kind of contacting each other while they were like on a run by sending like a vibration.
Oh, cool.
So that's something I would love to explore.
That's fun. I like that idea a lot.
And especially now, because it kind of gives you the illusion of touch in a way. And I think everyone is craving a little bit like a physical touch in some way because you just can't. So to see the potential there would be really neat. So I just have an interest in like wearables because I'm really into fitness, but.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Nice.
You mentioned self-determination theory in that context. Can you expand on what you mean? I think I'm going to ask you about my iPhone menu button too.
Ooh, okay.
So yeah, please tell me what you think about or what you meant by self-determination theory, and then I'll qualify my answer around that. Or sorry, qualify my next question around that.
Yeah, for sure. So self-determination theory, I believe it's by Ryan and Deci, but it's a motivational theory, and it basically just says that humans are optimally functioning when they have intrinsic motivation, and that's when they're doing something because it's fun and it kind of aligns with their values as opposed to external rewards. And they believe that to get to the state of having intrinsic motivation, there's three basic psychological needs that need to be met. So there's relatedness, autonomy, and competence. That's it. But yeah, those basic needs need to be met to essentially have this state of intrinsic motivation. So with the sending vibrations to people, we were assuming that it might increase the feeling of relatedness. And that might increase intrinsic motivation. But yeah, that was like our line of thinking.
This is incredible. Now I'm thinking about gaming in general because there always is that push and pull between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So a lot of games have this rumble effect after you get hit by something. And to me, when I'm playing a melee combat game and I get hit and it rumbles, I feel like I'm personally hit.
Personally attacked.
Yeah, and I think that increases my intrinsic motivation, possibly because it improves my immersion in the game. So it's just this wonderful, like, I'm a huge psychology nerd. So hearing
I love that.
like yeah, it's just this wonderful bridge between like this emerging integration of haptics and more of our technology, plus like our experiences with playfulness, but also like the devices that are extensions of ourselves in the first place. So I'm getting really, really jazzed. My question about the iPhone is also related to this. I'm so glad that you've already proven that, you are bringing psychology into what you're doing, because I wanted to know if you have thought about why it is that we end up with paired associations between haptics and a task. So what I mean is when I click my menu button and my phone unlocks, that haptic sensation forever for me is associated with pushing a button. But it's not actually that, right? When I first got the iPhone, it felt foreign, but now when my iPhone's off and I don't feel that feedback, I feel like nothing's happened. So what's the psychology there?
That's a great question. I'm not sure I know fully the answer to. I want to just say repetition. But so do you still have like the button on your iPhone or like, because I have the swipe.
Yeah. Yeah, I still.
Sorry, I'm revealing the version.
Can you see?
We love that.
I'm showing.
I do miss the
showing
button.
the video for the listener. I've got the iPhone 6, and it has a button or something. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I'm not sure, honestly, if I know the psychology too much behind that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm not sure if I do, but do you have any kind of ideas?
I mean, probably just classical conditioning, just like you said, repetition, doing it over and over. It's just I suppose the more exciting question, if you were to ever bring in a psychologist to collaborate, or if you were ever to dive into this in your own work, connected with the Haptiverse, is you could try to understand what the intrinsic psychological association is with each experience, each haptic sensation. Because I don't know that Apple really thought about it too deeply or even had the capacity to tinker. But clearly, they tried to replicate the button press. There's just probably so many ways that you could do it. I don't know. Again, psychology nerd, totally nerding out.
No, that's a great question that I wish I had the answer to. But yeah, it always like intrigues me, just like the connection with haptics and psychology, just because it is imitating that sense of touch. So there's a lot of different avenues to go. But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot more that can probably be done with Apple. I think they're doing a pretty good job, but yeah, especially like for example with the Apple Watch, like expanding how many different types of vibrations you can do and having users customize their own. I think that would also increase autonomy in a way because they get to make their own vibration.
I can't imagine. I mean, you can make your own vibration with oh, I just thought of something really cool. I was going to say you can make your own vibration when you put your phone onto vibrate mode. And I have done this where
you can like tap.
Well, you can assign different vibrations for different people. So I have a different vibration for my partner than I do for my mom.
Oh, I love that.
The same way you'd have a different ringtone. And again, there's probably psychology there in the associations I then have with that sensation. Depending on if I know my mom is mad at me, then that sensation feels weird. And when you're out in the world, oh, it's very cool. All this stuff is very cool. Since we know a lot about, we know so much about like the olfactory system and sight and sound. Like we know a lot about how we have memory stored with those sensations. And then this, again, emergent technology of haptics is there's so much that still gets to be explored. Very cool.
I don't have a cell phone, so I can't participate in this conversation.
Oh yeah,
Good
we
for
laugh
you.
at my iPhone, and Tobin doesn't even have a phone.
But my brother is a back-end coder at Nike working on their apps, and now I want to talk to him
Cool.
about ideas to make vibrations for like, because so he'll program the stuff where it's like, you know, if you hit a certain milestone, here's, you know, a visual reward. But now I want to have a conversation with him about, do you have like vibration settings for if they, you know, reach a milestone or they finish a run, that there's like this pulsing stuff to be like, yeah, you did it. So that's what I'll be talking to him when we both have an insomnia episode tonight.
So I know there's like a few running apps that you can send like an applaud, but I think it's purely sound. So yeah, I mean, pitch that idea and let me know.
You could do a really, really cool citizen science game with your Haptiverse. You have people go and explore it, and then they can tell you what their impression is of each sound. Like they could say, oh no, this makes me feel like I'm walking on a shaky bridge, or this makes me feel like I'm getting a warm hug.
That's actually another, like, that's a really neat idea. And like also another way to pitch the Haptiverse, I guess, that you can have researchers run studies like using the Haptiverse. So that'd be kind of neat.
That'd be so fun. If you did want to do a citizen science game, I know the Games Institute community will be all over that. But yeah, I feel like we're going to have to do a follow-up episode in the future when we know more about how the Haptiverse has been taken up in its different settings. Plus, I know that your lab in general, the lab that you're involved with Oliver, the Haptic Lab, is doing some really, really cool stuff with science teaching. Do you get to get involved with any of that stuff, with any other projects?
So right now I've been mostly just focused on the Haptiverse, but I know with like the Haptic Lab that's being built right now, I know it's like open to pretty much anyone that's really interested to learn about haptics. So that's pretty neat. So I guess I definitely have the opportunity there to get involved in other projects, but for right now it's mainly just been like Haptiverse stuff.
And how about your connection with the broader HCI group at the GI? Because you're working on stuff that's pretty separate, but do you still get to be involved in that community?
For sure. So for the Haptic Lab, I know we have like our meetings almost every day, just kind of like check-ins, and then we have the like weekly HCI meeting where I get to hear about all the cool projects going on. I do also connect sometimes with different students just through Slack to they might have like a certain expertise that I want to learn about, especially if it's connected somehow to the Haptiverse. Like for an example, I think one student just had more info on research through design, and that's something I kind of wanted to implement with the Haptiverse. So I know I reached out to a few students to learn more about that. So that's been really neat to learn from them. And it's really cool that it's interdisciplinary, so get different perspectives.
Always love to hear about how people find their community within the broader GI community. It makes me happy. we are, I mean, I'm so excited to go into the physical space and see the Haptic Lab once it's built. And I'm so excited to see all of the different places you get to take it. Part of me really does hope that you stick around and do a PhD, but I'll let you, decide your future.
I know I definitely want to be able to like go in the lab and play with the different haptic devices. I think it'd be so neat. But yeah, we will see when that can happen. Hopefully soon.
All right. So the question that we like to capstone, and you can take a few moments to think about this, is if you could have everyone in the world play one game, what would it be?
We can spice this up a little bit for you too, and say, feel free to take this in the direction of, if you could imagine in the future a game that involves haptics or an experience that involves haptics and does it really well, what would that be?
Ooh. I'm trying to think of a game that really supports relatedness, because I feel like that's something we're all kind of craving, especially right now, and that could be super helpful during this pandemic. I wonder if I'm just gonna say it because I've played it so much, but like a Sims with haptics would be so neat.
Yes. What would that look like?
Well, you definitely need some sort of haptic device to support that. I'm gonna throw in, why not? If there was like midair haptics, if that was an option, I'm just thinking in the future, that'd be so cool. Like, especially if your Sims are playing maybe like a game of catch, and you could just like somehow like envision that, or if you're your own Sim, like you can kind of take on that and just kind of, if you're like pressing a button or cooking, I guess, like to have some sort of object where you feel like the haptic sensation of you actually performing that activity, that'd be so neat. That is going to be very much in the future, but who knows?
That would be amazing, because I think that would also help improve, what's the word? Empathy. I lost that word for a second, but you know how there's that cliche where you build a swimming pool and then get rid of the ladder and your sim drowns and you watch it drown? I mean, I definitely am not of the mind that doing that has any impact on you, who you are as a person, because that's just, rite of passage.
That's so funny.
But maybe you could integrate some haptics so that
You can sympathize with your sim. No, I agree. Because I mean, I definitely like would push the limit with my sims, just with them interacting, because I knew I just couldn't do that in real life. So why not? The drama between my sim families, insane. But to sympathize more with them, that'd be pretty neat. And I'm kind of thinking about it. I'm like, I guess you can just like actually cook, but what would be the benefit of just doing it like virtually? There's no mess, you know?
I mean, you could say that about simulation games without
True.
But you could translate this to so that you can get more of that element of relatedness. You can translate this to MMORPGs, multi online role playing games. What was the first time? Multimedia.
Massively multiplayer online role-playing games.
Yes.
Massively multiplayer online role-playing games. But you could turn The Sims into an MMORPG, and then you could have haptic feedback of hugging your friends and family.
That would be so nice.
That would be fun. I subscribe to that game.
Yep, that'd be super neat. Being able to actually somehow feel like a hug from another sim, but I guess it'd be an actual person in a way. That'd be so cool.
I mean, we have to be careful because otherwise haptics are going to take over our lives and we'll end up like the folks in Ready Player One. No, that's
Yeah, we have to be careful for sure.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to a follow-up of this conversation when we see what haptics has turned into, even like a year or two from now. But this has been awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for being so welcoming.
No, this was really fun. You need to tell Oliver to buy you a PS5 so you can mess around with the controller.
I think that's the move. If you want to like send him a little Slack message, I'll support it.
Okay.
Careful what you wish for. Okay. Well, I don't know how to thank you enough. Happy Wednesday. And
Happy Wednesday.
Yeah. And,
enjoy the weather.
We will link the Haptiverse into the chat. People can go and see it while it's in progress, right?
Yeah, you can definitely check it out. Just beware, it's a little buggy. But it's a work in progress, as are many things, you know?
There you go. Okay. Yeah. We will catch you next time.